I always considered myself a cautious person, the kind who double-checks a contract before signing, who monitors bank notifications, and carefully saves every receipt. But nothing in my life could have prepared me for the day when an email from the bank appeared in my inbox. It was a standard notification, dry, emotionless. Dear client, we remind you of the upcoming mortgage payment in the amount of $2,850. I blinked and read the line again. Mortgage. I'd never taken out a mortgage, never in my life. I live in a rented apartment, saving for a down payment, and I know full well my finances are far from ready to get involved with loans. I immediately decided it was a mistake, some glitch in the database, a wrong last name, or a system error. But when I opened the bank app, my heart stopped. Under my name, there was a mortgage for $470,000. I sat in my chair and literally couldn't breathe. My head was ringing. Blood pounded in my temples. No, this can't be, I whispered aloud as if to myself. My hands shook as I scrolled through the documents. Everything looked completely legitimate. There was my name, my date of birth, my social security number. I felt the ground slipping away from under my feet. This wasn't a mistake. This was reality. A few minutes later, with trembling hands, I dialed the bank's number. An automated voice hold music, then the operator's voice. Good day, bank asterisk asterisk. How can I help? It must be a mistake. I struggled to find the words. I just got a notification about a mortgage payment, but I've never taken out a mortgage. A pause, the sound of typing in the background. One moment. Yes, I see your profile. You do have a real estate loan listed. WHAT loan, my voice cracked. I didn't sign anything. The operator typed something again. According to the documents, the loan was approved 2 years ago. The collateral is a house at address asterisk. The signatures fully match yours. Signatures, my throat went dry. You're saying you have papers with MY signature. That's correct. If you'd like, we can send you copies of the documents. I dropped the phone on the table. My legs buckled, everything blurred before my eyes. Someone had used my name, my data, my future. At that moment, I didn't know what to think. The first thing that came to mind was identity theft. Someone stole my information and took out the loan. It happens. But when I got the documents by email and saw the signatures, I was speechless. Yes, it was my signature, almost an exact copy, but I knew it wasn't me. And then a thought flashed through my mind that truly terrified me. My parents. Only they knew all my personal details. Only they had copies of my documents, passport, SSN. Only they could. I immediately pushed the thought away. No, that's insane. They would never do that. But my heart knew the truth before my brain dared to admit it. I drove to their place that same evening. The drive took 40 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Everything inside me was boiling. They greeted me as usual. Mom with a smile, Dad with his habitual calm face. Son, you're here so suddenly, Mom said, setting tea on the table. Did something happen? I stood in the middle of the kitchen and pulled out my phone. What is this? My voice trembled. On the screen, the open mortgage document, their address, their house, my signature. They fell silent. Mom's face paled. Dad just pressed his lips together and looked away. Answer me, I hissed. Is this a joke? The pause was too long, too loud. And then Dad said, we were going to tell you. Tell me? I laughed nervously. You were going to tell me that you took out $470,000 of debt in MY name. Mom covered her face with her hands. We had no choice. No choice. I slammed my fist on the table so hard that the teacup overturned. You took MY future, my name, my life, and just used it like a credit card. They spoke at the same time, interrupting each other. We were desperate. The banks refused us. You knew how hard it is to pay taxes and medical bills. We thought we'd pay it all back ourselves later. I listened and felt something breaking inside me. These weren't strangers scamming me. These were my parents, the very people who were supposed to protect me. And now they had ruined my life. I stood up. Do you even understand what you've done? Now I'm on the hook with the bank for decades. No credit, no house, no future, all because of you. Dad tried to keep a straight face. Son, it's for the family, for all of us. For the family, I smiled bitterly. Family is about trust, and you stole my life. I turned and walked out, leaving them in the kitchen in silence. In the car, I sat motionless for a long time. My hands trembled, my chest burned. I remembered my childhood, Dad teaching me to ride a bike, Mom ironing my school shirts. All those warm memories turned to ash in an instant. How could they? And then I realized this was just the beginning. Because $470,000 isn't just a mistake, it's a sentence, and I had to find a way out, even if it meant destroying the family for good. I thought that after leaving my parents that night, things would settle down a bit, that the anger would pass and we could resolve it calmly. I was wrong. In the morning, the bank sent a second envelope. This time, a notice of overdue payment and a warning. If the amount is not received within 10 days, we will initiate the foreclosure procedure on the collateral property. The word foreclosure sounded like a diagnosis. I called a lawyer recommended by work, a woman named Maria with an ironclad reputation. She listened to me for about 10 minutes, then asked me to send all the documents. Her voice on the phone was even, but I could hear the steely professionalism behind it. Alex, first, copies of all documents. Second, I want you to avoid contact with your parents until I review the papers. And third, we'll file a fraud case if we find signs of forgery. I made scans and sent them. When Maria got back to me, I was sitting on a powder keg. She described what I had already seen: the mortgage, the house at Oak Ridge Drive, the signature, the identifiers. But she added a couple of phrases that injected ice into my heart. The documents are legally formatted correctly, but that doesn't mean you're at fault. Sometimes people sign without understanding what they're signing. We'll check. And also, if the bank has a promissory note on you, don't panic. There are ways to challenge the transaction due to abuse of trust or fraud. Can you speed this up? I asked, feeling my voice tremble. I'll try, but listen carefully. Until we file an official claim, the bank will pressure you, collectors will call. Prepare yourself. The collectors called that same day. A male voice on the line spoke with careful sternness. Mr. Allen, we're calling from the collections department. Your payment is overdue. If the funds aren't received within 7 days, we'll initiate the forced seizure procedure. I hung up and suddenly noticed my phone screen was lit up with unread messages. Chats from colleagues, bank notifications, texts from Mom, "Can we talk?" and from Dad, "Let's talk tonight, son." I didn't want to talk. I went to the office, sat at my desk, and after half an hour realized I couldn't focus. Code, deadlines, presentations, none of it mattered anymore. Maria's words, "Don't contact your parents," sounded like a demand for self-restraint that I didn't want to follow, but I did as she said. That evening, as I finished a report late into the night, my phone vibrated again. On the screen, Mom's name. I looked at it and turned off the sound. Maria and I met at her office the next day. She laid out a folder with copies, charts, notes on the table. She had a clear plan. First, the bank. File an official fraud complaint. Second, the police. A report on signature forgery and abuse of trust. Third, a request to authorities about who and when accessed your data. Fourth, if it turns out to be your parents, we'll have to prepare for a court case involving family confrontation. I listened silently. If it turns out to be your parents, 3 words I didn't want to say out loud back then, but they hung in the air like a sentence. While Maria spoke, my phone was silent. That was the first positive moment in recent days. I thought, finally, something concrete is starting to happen. But the uplift didn't last long. 3 days later, the first responses from the bank came. They sent commented copies of the documents. I looked at them like a crime thriller. The signature was there, stamps were there, notary marks, all in order. But at the bottom of one sheet, in fine print, there was a note. Powers granted based on power of attorney number. I reread it and froze. Power of attorney in my name, signed by Mom. I called Maria, and for the first time her voice showed fatigue. "That's a clever move," she said. "Many people use powers of attorney to reassign. It doesn't mean you agreed, but it's a legal maneuver. We need to understand when this power of attorney was signed and under what conditions." I realized one thing. My parents weren't just organizers of the deal. They had prepared a legal cushion in advance, laid the groundwork that gave everything the appearance of legitimacy. And they did it without me. Anger flared up so much that I almost physically felt its heat. I gave Maria access to my parents' email correspondence. Yes, they had links to my email, that's a separate story, and she found another strange message. An email exchange between my mother and the realtor. In it, politely and calmly, Mom asks to speed up the process, specifically on our son, because it's easier to pass the process with our son's credit rating and then we'll return the house to him. What I saw on the screen could only be called deliberate. My parents knew they were using me as a tool and were preparing escape routes. I drove to them. The door opened almost without a knock. Mom stood in the hallway as if expecting me. Dad sat in an armchair and his face had the same expression I saw that night, a mix of shame and determination. "Alex," Mom began, "let's talk." "Let's talk," I repeated coldly. "You wrote to the agent on our son, right? You knew what you were doing." She faltered, then nodded. "We were thinking about the family's future," she replied. "We thought it would be easier this way. We wanted to protect the house." "Protect?" I laughed bitterly, as always. "You protected the house, and you put my future under the mortgage. Now I can't get a loan, I'm tied to your debt. How do you even imagine this, protect the house, if you're leaving me in debt?" Dad stood up and unexpectedly said quietly, "We didn't want to harm you. We thought we could handle it, but the debts, they piled up, and the bank was pressuring us." "Why didn't you ask me for advice? Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked with pain. "And how would you have reacted?" Dad replied heatedly. "You would have refused and left us without a roof. We couldn't do that." This was an old trick, shifting the conversation to guilt. They spoke with the voices of parents who had instilled for years, "We did this for you." But now it sounded like an accusation. If you're against it, then you're a traitor. This line of pressure didn't work immediately, but it started to erode my nerves. They evoked a sense of guilt in me that I tried hard to suppress. My role as a son, my duty to elders, all of it interfered with clear thinking. Meanwhile, the collection calls didn't stop. At work, colleagues started noticing my distracted state. My manager called me in for a talk, and I struggled to explain that I needed a few days to sort out family instability. The girl I'd been dating for 6 months sent a message. "I'm not ready for this level of uncertainty. Maybe you should figure things out before we continue." That was a second blow. The pressure from all sides was doing its job. The bank, parents, relationships, work, all of it was starting to squeeze me like a vice. And then came an unexpected twist. I was sitting at home late at night, reviewing the correspondence, and found an email from the realtor with an attachment, an audio recording of negotiations. I pressed play, thinking it was just more legal junk. And suddenly I heard a familiar voice, Dad's voice, calm but insistent. "We want to put everything on our son because he's younger and has good credit. He'll return the house to us in a few years when he settles down. This is a temporary measure," Dad said on the recording. I listened to it several times. The recording also had Mom's phrase, If anything, I'll sign the power of attorney. The main thing is that the bank accepts the application. This recording proof of intent, but it was also a knife aimed straight at the heart of my family. Because with it, the question was settled. This wasn't identity theft by strangers, not fraud by outsiders. This was deliberate use of me in a family scheme. I took a copy of the recording to Maria. She watched it without looking away. "This is a golden document," she said. "With it, we can show there was intent and motivation from third parties. It helps, but it's important to act carefully. A public scandal is a path that will destroy family relationships. Are you ready to go all the way?" I looked at her and thought that I was ready not just to go, I had to go. Because if I refused to fight, they would cease to be parents in my eyes. Yes, it was a rupture and it was painful, but the choice was no longer made by reason alone. It was made by the heart. That evening I came home and saw an envelope on the table in our apartment. Inside was a simple message from Mom. "Think before you destroy everything. You're our son. The house is for all of us. We were counting on you." I took the envelope, put it in a drawer, and for the first time in many days fell asleep without anxiety. In the morning, I woke up feeling like I was entering a battle. This was a fight for my freedom against those who were supposed to protect me. But I no longer felt regret. I felt determination. The chapter closes with Alex deciding to go all the way with the lawyer, file claims with the bank and police. He loses his parents' emotional support but gains evidence. In the air hangs the question: is he ready to destroy the family to save his life? And one more note of intrigue: someone else is watching what's happening. In the shadows, a new player emerges whose interests are tied to the house on Oak Ridge Drive. Maria insisted. In the morning, we went to the bank together. I expected cold corridors and indifferent clerks, but it was worse. It was a hall where life was divided into numbers and obligations. The loan manager, a man with perfectly styled hair and a boring voice, flipped through my file like a menu in a restaurant. "Mr. Allen, everything is in order with us. Signatures are there, power of attorney is there, the mortgage is active. You are the borrower, it's your obligation to pay." But the power of attorney was signed without my knowledge. I kept myself in check, though inside I was boiling. I have a recording where my parents discuss using my credit. This is direct manipulation. The manager raised his eyes, as if seeing me as a person for the first time, not a number. "If you have such evidence, you can go to the police. But until a court decision, for us, you are the sole payer." Maria calmly leaned forward. "We've already filed a claim. You'll receive notification. I advise you to freeze penalties and interest accrual until the proceedings. Otherwise, the bank will find itself accused of complicity." The manager nearly choked, but held back a smile. "We'll await official documents." We left the bank, and for the first time I felt the weight of reality. Yes, the process had begun, but this was a marathon, not a sprint. A couple of days later, my parents called themselves. First, Mom. "Alex, why are you going to court? This is family. We can resolve everything internally. You're destroying us." "You already destroyed it, Mom, when you decided for me." "Do you think you'll have a new family?" Her voice broke. "People come and go, but parents are always there. You'll lose us and strangers won't become family." I wanted to scream, but only replied, "Family doesn't sign $500,000 of debt behind their son's back." After that, Dad sent a dry message: "Be ready for the consequences." Maria said this was already a serious level of pressure. They had started preparing a defense. A week later, a local newspaper journalist called me. "Mr. Allen, we have information that you've sued your own parents. We'd like a comment." I froze. Who leaked it? Maria suggested. It was done by the parents themselves or their lawyer to portray me as an ungrateful son. That same day, a post appeared on social media. Young IT guy from London betrayed his parents by suing them because they took out a mortgage in his name to save the house. Under the post, hundreds of comments. Some condemned the parents, but most accused me. Selfish, traitor, shame on the son. I read those words and felt something breaking inside. I didn't want war. I just wanted the truth. That evening, there was a knock at the door. On the threshold stood a tall man in his 40s in an expensive coat. He introduced himself. John Harper, I'm an investor. The house on Oak Ridge Drive that your parents mortgaged interests me. We had a preliminary conversation with them. If it comes to foreclosure, I'm the first bidder. What? I stared at him, unbelieving. They were already planning to sell the house. Oh, Mr. Allen, he smirked slightly. Your family has been in debt for a long time. This house is collateral, and your parents aren't the only ones playing these games. He handed me a business card and added, think about it. Sometimes it's more profitable to let go of the house than to fight for it. I closed the door, but his words stuck in my head. Late at night, I listened to the audio recording of my parents' conversation with the realtor again. Dad's words, "This is temporary," now sounded like cynicism. At that moment, I realized this story was no longer just about the house and money. It was a story about choice, saving what's rotting from the inside or breaking free from it forever. I wrote to Maria, "We're going all the way, even if I have to lose them." She replied with one word, "Prepare." And in that moment, I understood that ahead was a battle, a real one. The first hearing was scheduled for early October. I didn't sleep the night before. My heart pounded as if I were running a marathon. It seemed like every breath was hard. Maria met me at the courthouse. Black suit, stern gaze, folder of papers like a weapon. "Ready?" she asked, and I nodded, though I didn't feel ready. We entered the courtroom. The judge, a gray-haired woman with cold eyes, was already seated at the high bench. The clerk announced the case. Alex Allen versus Richard and Catherine Allen. Charges: mortgage fraud, use of personal data without consent. My parents sat across from me. Mom, in a strict dress with a feigned sorrowful face. Dad serious, but in his gaze I caught something new, a mix of defiance and fear. The judge asked, "Mr. Allen, do you confirm that your parents took out a mortgage loan in your name for $470,000 without your consent?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, and my voice sounded louder than I expected. "I have an audio recording of the conversation where they discuss it." Mom threw up her hands. "Your Honor, we're not fraudsters. We're parents who wanted to save the house. Our son knew about our decision. He's just angry now because outsiders egged him on." She looked my way with such theatrical pain that part of the courtroom whispered. Dad added, "Alex has always been weak, easily influenced. His girlfriend, this lawyer lady, turned him against the family." Maria calmly stood up. "Your Honor, we have evidence. The audio recording. Bank statements showing the power of attorney was not signed by the plaintiff himself. And most importantly, we have an expert opinion on signature forgery." The judge nodded. "The evidence will be admitted." After the break, the parents' lawyer spoke. A young, self-assured guy in an expensive suit. He spoke as if we'd already lost. "Honorable court, my clients found themselves in a difficult situation. Their house was about to be taken. They turned to their son, but he refused to help. In desperation, they used a power of attorney that he signed 2 years ago." The lawyer paused. "Yes, perhaps not fully understanding the consequences. But now he's suing not over money, but over personal grudges." Whispers rose in the courtroom again. It all looked like I was the ungrateful son portraying his parents as criminals. The judge frowned. "Mr. Allen Jr., did you really have a power of attorney?" I stood up. "Yes, but it was limited to household matters, paying bills, minor expenses, no loans." Maria added, Moreover, that power of attorney expired last year, and the signature on the new one is forged. The expertise proves it. The judge nodded, but I could see she wasn't ready to rule yet. And then my parents played their trump card. Mom stood up, her voice trembling. Your Honor, my son has long distanced himself from us. He doesn't respect his parents. He said we're a burden to him. I have correspondence where he writes to friends that parents are dragging him down. And they submitted printouts of my old messages to the court. Yes, I had once written that to a friend in a fit of anger, but seeing it here, out of context, was like a knife stab. The judge looked at me. Mr. Allen, do you confirm these are your words? I swallowed. Yes, but it has no bearing on the case. I was angry, but anger isn't consent to $500,000 in debt. Mom sobbed so that even the bailiff gave her a pitying look. When it seemed the situation had heated up to the limit, Maria asked for the floor. Your Honor, we wish to call a witness. The door opened and into the courtroom walked John Harper, the same investor who had come to my home. I nearly swore out loud. Identify yourself, said the judge. John Harper, real estate investor. I communicated with Richard and Catherine Allen about buying their house. And yes, they admitted to me themselves that the mortgage was taken out in their son's name without his knowledge. I'm ready to confirm their words under oath. Murmurs rose in the courtroom. My parents paled. Dad jumped up. You're lying, you bastard. We didn't say that. The judge sharply struck the gavel. Order in the court. And I sat thinking, why is Harper helping me? What's in it for him? Maria quietly leaned toward me. Don't trust him completely. He has his own motives, but right now he's on our side. The judge summed up. The case is complex. There are conflicting testimonies, but the facts of document forgery require thorough investigation. The next hearing is scheduled in 3 weeks. I left the courtroom drained. My parents didn't even look my way. And Harper caught up with me at the doors. We'll meet again, Alex. And believe me, this story is just the beginning. He smiled in a way that sent a chill down my spine. The following days turned into hell. Local media sniffed out the scandal of the century and started calling me every 10 minutes. Cameras outside my house, articles with headlines like, Son versus Parents, $470K mortgage scandal, fraud or misunderstanding. I felt like the hero of a black comedy where the whole world looks at you with reproach. Even friends started keeping their distance, some afraid of getting involved, others just not understanding how this was possible. Maria stayed by my side the whole time. Ignore it, Alex. The main thing is the court. Everything else is noise. But the noise grew. My phone buzzed constantly. Social media filled with comments. Ungrateful son, parents are martyrs, shame. I wanted to rip out that phone and throw it in the river. When we came to the next court hearing, the courtroom was packed with journalists. My parents sat with stone faces, and their lawyer again tried to build a theory of innocence. Your Honor, he began, we believe that the publication of these events in the media undermines the family's authority and affects the parents' mental state. The judge interrupted him. That's not your concern. We're examining facts. And then an unexpected witness appeared, a neighbor who claimed he saw Alex's father personally signing papers at the bank, allegedly explaining to his son that it was needed to save the house. He didn't say it out loud, the neighbor said, but I heard him. I can confirm that Alex didn't give consent. The courtroom buzzed again. I felt a strange mix of relief and horror. The testimony protected me, but the publicity grew every minute. After the court, Harper invited me for coffee. I didn't know what to expect. Alex, he began calmly, I'm not just an investor. I know a lot about your parents. They tried to play you using your trust. I want to help you, but there's a catch. What catch? I asked, feeling my heart beat faster. The house in question is worth more than $470,000. If we win the case, there's a way to use its value to close all debts, but it's a risk. They could file a counterclaim for slander. I looked at him. This man was an ally on one hand, but his interests didn't fully align with mine. "So you're playing with us, but why are you helping me at all?" I asked. He smiled. "Because it's interesting, and because I believe truth should prevail, even if it's painful." Meanwhile, my parents started acting slyly. They tried to intimidate me, threatening legal action against the lawyer, relatives, friends. Every day, letters from their lawyers arrived with accusations: breach of trust, accusation without evidence, public humiliation of the family. Mom even approached me once in the supermarket. "Alex, think about your conscience. You're destroying the family." I barely held back my anger. "Conscience? Conscience stayed with you when you signed someone else's mortgage on me without warning." She froze, panic flashed in her eyes. 2 weeks after the loud hearings, something unexpected happened. The bank sent a notice of an urgent review of the mortgage contract. Experts confirmed the signature was forged, the documents falsified. The judge, seeing this, finally frowned seriously. "I see the case is taking a serious turn. Now I need to study all the evidence, after which we'll render a decision." I felt a strange relief, but anxiety remained. Every minute felt like an eternity. Harper approached me again after the hearing. "Alex, soon it'll be clear who was honest and who tried to deceive you. But remember, this is just the beginning. They won't give up without a fight." And I understood that the next battle would be even tougher. Public opinion against me, parents against me, the legal system against me. And even allies might not be who they seem. I never thought life could turn into a nightmare where every step is a trap. After the expert's acknowledgement of the forged signature, my parents started acting even more aggressively. Their cold determination was felt even in letters and calls. But soon I realized this was no longer just a legal game. It was a personal war. One evening, as I returned home, a package lay on the apartment doorstep. Inside, photos of me and Harper, taken on the street. On the back was a short note: "Next time will be worse. Think about your safety." My heart stopped. This wasn't an empty threat, it was a warning. I knew my parents couldn't have done this themselves, too risky. Someone was watching me. I called Harper. Someone's following me. Photos." "Excellent," he replied. "That means we're on the right track. They're scared. But be careful, Alex. One wrong step and they might cross the line." At the next court hearing, my parents presented a new lawyer, famous, aggressive, who tried to turn everything upside down. He declared, "These accusations are fabricated. The son's signature was voluntary. Moreover, the parents' actions were to preserve family property." The judge frowned, and I felt the tension in the courtroom rise to the limit. I knew simple evidence wasn't enough now. Harper and I met after the court. "Alex," he said, "they're setting a trap. We need a move that will destroy them completely." I nodded. Inside me churned a sense of danger, but also determination. The next day, an old family friend called me who had never interfered in their affairs. His voice trembled. "Alex, listen to me. I know what your parents are doing. They've prepared documents to shift even more debts onto you. But there's a copy of recordings of their negotiations with the bank. I can pass it to you." When I got the recordings, I realized this was the turning point. Every step of theirs recorded, every lie documented. "We'll win," I said to Harper. "We just need to act right." That night, returning home, I noticed a car following me. The headlights blinded my eyes, and I realized it wasn't a coincidence. My heart pounded so hard it seemed it would burst from my chest. "Harper, they're tailing me," I reported. "Don't stop," he replied calmly. "We need to expose them." Every turn, every traffic light, a game of survival. I couldn't call the police. they might be plants. I felt like the hero of a spy movie where every minute decides everything. A few days later, an unexpected meeting occurred. My parents came to my office without warning. Their faces were calm, but their eyes shone with coldness. "Alex," Mom said, "let's talk like family." "Family?" I asked, clenching my fists. "Family signs a mortgage in a child's name without their knowledge." Dad tried to intervene, but I stopped him with a gesture. "Enough. Everything you've done now has consequences, and I'll show it to the whole world if I have to." At that moment I realized the game had changed forever. I was no longer just a victim. I was an active player, and now everything depended on how bold my steps would be. With Harper's help and the friend's evidence, I prepared a full package of documents for the court. It included conversation recordings, financial reports, and proof of forgery. Alex, Harper said, "We're ready, tomorrow, all or nothing." And I understood. There would be no turning back tomorrow. Tomorrow would decide who wins, the parents' lies and cunning or truth and justice. I never thought one morning could decide my entire life. I woke up with a heavy heart but a clear thought. Today I'm not just a son, I'm a person ready to fight for my truth. The court was packed. My parents sat in the front row, looking at me coldly. Their lawyer had already prepared his strategy, and I felt every glance of his aimed at breaking me morally. The judge began hearing the case, and first thing, I handed her the documents, conversation recordings, and proof of forged signatures. "Alex," Harper whispered, "now they'll pressure, don't falter." I nodded. Inside, everything trembled, but outwardly I stayed calm. The parents' lawyer began attacking. "Your Honor," he declared with cold confidence, "my client claims the document signing was voluntary. Everything was done to preserve family property." I saw my parents trying to stay calm, but anxiety flashed in their eyes. "Your Honor," I began, "I never signed those documents. None of my actions gave them the right to create a mortgage in my name, and here's the evidence." I showed the recordings, bank documents, and the judge studied them carefully. And then the parents' lawyer lost his thread. On the screen appeared an unexpected video recording from the bank's security cameras. It showed Dad personally signing the papers with Mom watching. I was shocked. They had proven their own guilt. "Alex," Harper whispered, "this is the moment of truth." My heart pounded, adrenaline rushed through my veins. The whole courtroom froze, my parents in shock. After the break, my parents tried to approach me. "Alex, we did this for you," Mom exclaimed. "For me," I echoed, clenching my fists. "You did this to break me, to use my name for your own gain." Dad tried to intervene, but I stopped him with a look. "Enough excuses. Everything you've done has consequences. Today it all becomes public." The judge announced the decision. The mortgage is annulled. The parents are obligated to compensate moral damages and cover attorney expenses. Sighs of relief echoed in the courtroom. I felt a stone fall from my chest. "Alex," Harper said, "you did it, you won." I smiled through tears. The victory was not only legal but moral. After the court, I stepped outside. The sun shone brightly, but in my soul was a warm light of understanding. Truth always wins if you fight for it. I met with friends and Harper, and we celebrated a small victory. But most importantly, I realized I would never let anyone use me or my name for their own benefit. My life changed forever. I'm no longer the son who can be deceived. I'm a person who took control of his destiny. And even if my parents no longer believe they can manipulate me, I found freedom. Freedom to live honestly, decide for myself, and protect those I love.